For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. Award-winning author and poet Christopher Hope joins me to discuss his latest novel, Jimfish. Jimfish is part fable, part fierce commentary on the politics of power. It seems to reveal the moral outrage of the current South Africa. Was that your intention?
Yeah, I think it was, I think anger, I guess, is the principal emotion. But it's what I feel about the country in many ways, but it's an anger mixed with fierce affection. So I never know, it's rather like being in love with the wrong person. And you never know whether you should push the object of your affection over a cliff or marry her. And you know that neither will help. That's what I feel about the country, very strongly, put it that way. And I wanted to write something which celebrated the tragedy and the comedy, which is so intermixed in South Africa that often it's very difficult to tell them apart.
Your writing in Jimfish has been described as light-hearted with a non-literary style, which contrasts with the rage that bubbles deep below the surface of the book. Is this an accurate description of your writing style and emotions?
With Jimfish it is. I wanted to write a book about a boy who didn't know where he comes from. In fact, he comes out of the ocean somewhat mysteriously, so it's a fairy tale for grown-ups, it's sort of a fable. He doesn't know what ethnic background he's supposed to be. He disappoints everybody by not conforming to what they expect Jimfish to be, and also he echoes that name which I have to say, ashamedly, that years ago was often applied to people who apparently had no names. One would say to people, oh, and so what's your name, Jimfish? And those people tended to be black. So, of course, Jimfish is none of these colours, and that's what upsets so many people around him. He's not anything that anyone expects except innocent, deeply innocent, and everything that happens, however bad, is an astonishing surprise to him. So I wanted to, as I say, mix, again, gentleness and terror, and wit and tragedy in what I regard to be as an absolutely characteristic South African fashion. I mean, you can say about South Africa what somebody once said about Northern Ireland, that if you think you understand South Africa, then you are very greatly confused.
And yes, at the end, love does win out, and was that also your intention?
It does, and also, the book it's quite firmly based on a wonderful satire by a French writer called Voltaire, and a little book called Candide. And in that book, the recurring theme is that all is for the best in the best of all possible worlds. And poor Candide finds that it is not, actually. All is for the worst in the worst of all possible worlds. But he sees the bright side, and he sees the humour of it, and he sees the glorious dark comedy of it. And in this book, in Jimfish too, there's a kind of a Jimfish survives. Because he, in a sense, is devoted to things that matter, in his case to, say, preserving the coelacanth or preserving life as we know it. He's devoted to tolerance, he's non-violent. And in the end, he survives, and in a sense, love survives. So if somebody said to me it's a deeply pessimistic book, I'd have to say, well, it's a bit of both, really.
Throughout the book, you make reference to the coelacanth. Why did you choose to use this particular fish in reference to Jimfish?
Well, because the coelacanth fascinates me. In the 1930s, when the first coelacanth was pulled ashore in the nets of Captain Goosen's boat, it was thought that this strange fish with 4 legs, old 4 legs they called him, had been extinct for millions of years. And here was this, as they called it at the time, this living fossil. Well, that interested me, that a creature like this could have survived in the first place. In the second place, it seems as if when life first originated in the oceans and then gradually moved on land, it was with creatures like the coelacanth that were amphibious and moved between land and sea. So I wanted, in a sense, a symbol for the beginning of life, and in a sense the innocence of life, and also in a sense how life prevails against the odds, which is also what happens with Jimfish. He should be, frankly, he should be a wreck within the first 3 or 4 pages, and in fact he ends quite quietly, triumphantly.
The book has been described as the culmination of a lifetime's writing and thinking on both the apartheid regime and the history of the 20th century. Which major global 20th century events do your characters witness? What do they bring to these events?
Well, indeed, what I tried to do too was to write not a travelogue, because I hate that word, but a book which traced my own travels ever since I left South Africa in 1975 on what used to be called an exit permit. So it meant I couldn't come back for about 10 years. And in that time I travelled. And I happened to be in certain places at certain times. I was in Uganda in the aftermath of one of its many dictators. I was in Zaire when President Mobutu was in charge. I was not far from Chernobyl just before the reactor exploded. And I was in Romania just after the president and his wife, Ceausescu, the Ceausescu family, had been executed by this kangaroo court. And I wanted to know, and I was in Berlin, quite by chance, the night the wall began to come down. So I wanted to combine these things because they were momentous events in 20th century history, and also because the book is about walls falling down. It's about tolerance, it's about reaching across barriers rather than erecting barriers. And it's also about human stupidity and human cruelty, and how sometimes human innocence possibly, hopefully, escapes the sort of cruelty which we human beings go in for. So it's a personal testimony, but it's also, as I say, it's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale for grown-ups, and I hope it makes some of them smile.
Is it based in any way on your own experiences?
Very much so. In places like East Berlin, it was very remarkable because I went to bed that night and there was a strange noise all through the evening, and it was this chink, chink, chink sound. And you knew something was happening. And you know, the wall in Berlin ran all the way around the city, and it was in fact two walls with mines laid between. And what was happening was that there were these hundreds upon hundreds of people with chisels and hammers literally chiseling away at the wall till there were huge holes in it. And they called them woodpeckers, because that's what it sounded like. This chink, chink, chink went on. And it was the most remarkable scene, because I'd been into East Berlin the day before through Checkpoint Charlie, when there were guards and guns and dogs and heaven knows what. And 2 days later, the same East German guards who were supposed to shoot people if they tried to cross the wall were very carefully helping little old ladies through the hole in the wall into West Berlin so they can go and shop. So it was unforgettable, and nobody expected it. Nobody knew it was going to happen. So rather like, in a way, like the collapse of apartheid, nobody foresaw this. And I think we still don't know what it means. And rather, as with apartheid, somebody said, well, now it's all right, Berlin is unified. And somebody said, no, the wall is gone, but many people still have a wall in their heads.
How long did the book take to write, and what do you hope readers will learn from it?
Oh, it was sort of general length. It took about a year and a half, 2 years, I guess. And what I hope they'll take away from it is that comedy and tragedy are different sides of the same coin, and that what we are best at in South Africa is that rough, genuine, authentic humour which doesn't like authority very much, which protests when power becomes perverted, and which can be very funny, deeply ironic when South Africans feel they're being put down or spoken down to or taken for a ride. And that's what I hope the book celebrates, the feeling that, you know, we are an independent-minded people, and that's perhaps the greatest strength we have.
Now, on that note, if you could have an audience with today's leadership, what would you say to the leaders of this country? What are you most concerned about in the new South Africa?
Oh, I think I could answer that with one word, if one dared to be so simplistic. It would be tolerance. This country has been, until recently, founded upon intolerance. That was its trademark. That was its raison d'etre. People did not get on. People did not like each other. People persecuted each other. People locked each other up. This was something which we thought had gone. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of it about. And it seems to me the only way of addressing that is to address it in a spirit of tolerance, to, as Voltaire said, rather wonderfully, you know, I deeply disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it.
That was author and poet Christopher Hope speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about his novel Jimfish.